all those sorts. This is Tom Shepstone, and I'm happy to be on with Jason.
And the website naturalgasnow.org, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, we got to give your business a plug too. I mean, we might as well start it off because you're one of those journalistic types, one of those types that are in it for the, what do they call it, for the passion, probably not as much as the money. So we got to give you a plug whenever we can, that. So
thank you.
You bet. Hey, let's start off by talking about the recent coronavirus, COVID shutdowns.
I'd love to talk about that.
We're just a couple days shy of May 1st, and President Trump, which I found interesting, his shift of language over the last month to he was demanding things and then he started delegating a couple weeks ago. Like he realized this was bigger than him, so now it's a delegation phase. But talk to me a little bit as we approach May 1st, what you're seeing and hearing out there in your world, out in the Marcellus, Pennsylvania, New York, that area.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is just massive frustration with the entire thing. I believe everybody has gotten a little taste of socialism, and whether they admit that or not, or understand that or not, they're saying, I don't like this one little bit. The orders we've seen in New York and Pennsylvania, and Maryland, which are the ones I'm most familiar with, and also California, where my son lives, are wildly different. Every state is doing this a little bit different. But the one thing that they're consistent about is they're all going overboard. They started off, some of the states, for example, our governor today is just today saying, well, you can go back on the golf courses. Excuse me? Why the hell couldn't we go on the golf courses to begin with? This is crazy. Just too much. It was over the top. People are frustrated. They're angry. They understand the need to, take precautions. They understand the need to be careful. They're interested in the facts and doing things the right way. But they realize that the government is a very poor tool for finding your way through something like this. It may be the only tool that's available to some extent, but it's a very poor tool.
I'll tell you two things that are not lost on me. Number one is how quickly the government got the people to be obedient. That was not lost on me at all, okay? And number two is right now is a time for real leadership, and it really annoys me that the people who are making decisions really haven't spent much time in the real world. They've been somebody who has gotten a check every day, no matter what, their entire life.
And they're still getting a check.
And they're still getting a check, right? And they're still getting a check. And so that part leads me to this question, which is, I did have a little bit of passion. I dropped some F-bombs on Senator Hoeven's staff. I was really upset about that first round of the PPP and that whole switcheroo, how it just seemed like it was a little bit, let's put it this way, my journalistic instincts were going off beyond belief throughout that whole thing. And when I took a step back, I thought, okay, are we going through a shift here? Are we really going through? I mean, I'm not going to get upset. I'm just going to look at it for what it is. Is this a shift? Because the speed of this and everything involved, when I look at small business being defined under 500 people, and when you're a public company and you can be considered a small business, and that was rewritten to accommodate that, I got to ask you the question, are we going through a shift, Tom Shepstone? Because it seems to me that the traditional small and family business is going to have a hard time competing with government and public companies.
Well, I'm of two minds on it. I don't mean to equivocate, but let me give you the negative side first, which is, of course, small businesses are not up to manipulating the system like large businesses are. They don't even understand the rules of how to apply for things, or how you use your congressman maybe to get a leg up on something. They're inclined not to look for this kind of help in most cases anyway. All those sorts of things, and of course, many of them are cash strapped. So they don't have the staying power of some of the larger companies and governments and things like that. So that's the negative side of it. And that's all very real. But the other part of it is the positive side of it is small business is much easier to is much more able to adapt to circumstances than large businesses, and you see that with the supply chains for like groceries, for example. I noticed immediately that we have a couple of different supermarkets in town. One is a small local supermarket. It's not tiny, but it's a smaller supermarket that is an independent, so to speak. They have an affiliation with some co-op or something, but they're not part of a big chain. Okay, they're an independent. And we also have a very nice supermarket, which I love to shop in, that is probably 3 times the size. The classic new modern supermarket where you get a lot of takeout food and all kinds of things, and the bigger, bolder selection of items, and displays are beautiful and all that. But I noticed that the smaller supermarket was able to keep fairly constantly stocked with things like the toilet paper, which of course is everybody's joke these days because why are we having a run on toilet paper, but things like that and paper towels, they were able to keep more of that stuff coming in. And the reason is because they weren't dependent on these just-in-time manipulative systems that are designed to deliver stuff, the moment you need it, but not a moment earlier, where everything is, super managed by computers and not people. They were able to just simply adapt and go to, different suppliers and different places to get things, whereas the big guys, they were not nearly as flexible. And I think that continues to be the case right up to today. That some of the smaller businesses are easier to deal with these things. They find it easier to deal with these things because they're adaptable. And it takes me back to, I used to do a lot of consulting in the railroad industry. And again, not for big railroads. I don't know enough to do that. But I was quite involved for many years in helping set up little short line railroads. And back in that day, if we're talking 30 or 40 years ago, that was the same thing. The short line railroads were much more adaptable. They could take over a branch line. The big guys couldn't make any money at to save their soul. They could take it over and they could make some money. And a lot of them failed, but a lot of them made it, and because they were able to do things differently. And so that's the positive side. So again, I feel strongly both ways, I guess. How about that?
No, and here's the thing is that there's no right or wrong answer really on this because, like I said, I think it's a shift. I think it's just kind of the way things are going. And the adaption part is real. The quick and nimble part is real. And that was by design. And one of the reasons we're covering this on the Crude Life as far as the small business side so heavily is because a big portion of the oil and gas industry is small business. I mean, when you take a look at the trucker, the cafe owner, the frac sand guys, a lot of truckers, for example, are 1099 employees for a bigger company. And so they do that so they can be available 24/7 for their family, and they can also reduce rates on a dime when the oil industry comes out publicly and says, hey, guys, we need another 25% reduction. So small business is a very instrumental and critical part. And that's one of the reasons why we are paying attention to it so hard. Have you seen the impact of this at all on those sole proprietors and those, call it under 10, because a big part of the oil and gas business is those guys?
Yeah. I have not seen the direct effects yet. It's more everybody's speculating about it at this point, that if we don't, it's the kind of thing on the street where if we don't get back to work soon, we're going to be in trouble. But I haven't seen people actually go out of business yet. Unfortunately, in Pennsylvania, the one thing our governor has gotten right, and mostly he's gotten stuff wrong, but the one thing he's gotten right is that he's let the natural gas business continue. So that has continued to work, and people are continued to be employed in that regard. And but he made some critical mistakes at the beginning. For example, he had a list on his list of essential businesses, which the whole concept of essential and non-essential is so socialistic and so offensive. But in any case, on the list of non-essential businesses was loggers. My God, why in the world? Why in the world would you want to prevent a logger from going to work? He's out in the woods, and he drives his truck into the yard and dumps the product. That's it, So, fortunately, that was turned around rather quickly, and now he's turned around on construction businesses and things like that. And he's let people go back on golf courses, as I said earlier. So I've not seen it directly, and I at the end of the day, I'm optimistic because I think people don't like the socialism. They don't like the big spending. They recognize that it may be unavoidable for the moment. But I think the president's done a pretty good job of leadership. He seems to have known when to change the tone, when to go from we've got to fight this bug to now we've got to get back to work. He seemed to have his sense of timing pretty good on that.
I about floored a room the other day when they were just bashing President Trump, and I just kind of looked at him and I said, in my opinion, I believe he's the only one showing true leadership. And they looked at me and I said, listen, I'm not talking about anything outside of the fact when it first started, he compared it to a flu. And so far he's right. Yeah. Now there are some different ripples and there are some different concerns. I get that. And as he started to get informed, he started changing his tune a little bit to where, originally he wanted it back by Easter. To me, Trump started seeing that this was getting bigger than him, so he had to go to his religious base, and that's why he said Easter. In fact, I laughed because I said, boy, this coronavirus has gotten people so distracted, nobody even tried to manufacture a gaffe that, hey, Trump, nobody works on Easter, that type of thing. In the old days, somebody would have called him out, front page news, okay? Now, when he did, and then he switched it to, April 30th. Well, that's a $9.99 deal. It's May 1st is the same thing, but by saying April, it's sooner.
I know.
Yep. No, and trust me, this was, to me, I think he's showing the proper leadership. And then, like I said, as soon as he opened it up to May, he switched his language to more delegation. Okay, you guys are the ones that are telling the states to shut down. So it's not, because it did. It was a state shutdown, not a federal.
And the pressure is on. I can see it with our governor. We have a Democrat governor, Republican legislature, and the Republicans started passing bills, every day to reopen things, and the governor vetoed them the first time. But then the second time it came up, or I don't know, maybe the third or fourth time. But in any case, the Democrats started, making noises about, well, we may vote with Republicans. Well, then of course the governor relented and started opening things up, and so the pressure's on these guys, thank goodness. And I think Trump has helped to create that pressure very adroitly. And I have to tell you, when I'm watching him at these interviews, I feel confident in him. I feel like somebody who knows what they're doing is in charge, and I know not everybody feels that way, but I do, and I feel like he's using his healthcare experts, and if the truth be known, he may have relied on them a little too much, but he's balanced that with a concern for the economy from the very beginning, and he keeps talking about the potential for the economy to boom again and to come back quickly. And I think, you understand the psychology of this stuff is enormously important. If you have somebody up there saying, well, we have no choice. We had no choice to do it, and we're just going to have to get through it. We're all in it together. They all say. I'm getting a little tired of that.
Well, and that's a great point, because that was how I concluded that my defense of Trump's leadership during this, where I said, listen, guys, right now he's the only. What I'm hearing when I hear him talk is, we are now beyond everybody gets a trophy. We need to make real decisions here, and opening restaurants half full, that's not a thing. You're just going to put them out of business. So that is not a real solution. Opening up a casino so people sit every fourth machine and having somebody stand by so they can wipe it down in between people, that's not a real solution. Now, you're
No.
telling states to shut down, come up with a plan, because my plan is open up the economy. What do you got? That to me is what I hear from them, that we're beyond everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think the problem we have in the blue states, so to speak, and they're not all led by Democrats, but most of them, is that they are so used to government designing the solution for something, they can't imagine anything else, and they're just driven to tinker, mess with this, mess with that. And I think what everybody's looking for at this point is, you know what? Let's go back and reevaluate our strategy. Our strategy, it's obvious at this point. I just sent you, internet-wise, I just sent you a thing I send out daily to about 35 people, where I analyze the numbers for Pennsylvania. And you know how many people yesterday were the new deaths that we had yesterday? 81% of them were in nursing homes. 81%, and they've been 62% to date have been in nursing homes. What that tells me vividly is that we've had the wrong strategy here. The strategy should have been to protect our nursing homes, protect our most vulnerable, do whatever we have to do to protect the most vulnerable, and do the best we can, and let everybody else get it. I mean, I hate to sound cruel, and I don't mean to be cruel, but it's obvious that if everybody else gets it, most of them are not going to die. They're going to be sick. They're going to get better, and they're probably going to be immune. Okay, so that's what we should have done. We should have just concentrated on the most vulnerable and let everybody else get it.
Let's transition into a new area, if you wouldn't mind here, and that is into kind of the natural gas area. I don't know if you've seen Planet of the Humans by Michael Moore, or the documentary that
I watched a little bit of it, enough to know that why it's so tweaking the anti-Johnny Greens, if you know what I mean.
Right, and you know what? I'll tell you what, it's going to be a very important tool for the oil and gas industry in the next year, because that video probably did more to open up the conversation than anything the oil and gas industry has probably done in the last 10 years. And,
of course.
That's remarkable when you think about the amount of investment and the strategy that's been used. But getting back to the point of the deal is, I thought they did a really good job of just opening up the conversation of natural gas, in that natural gas is clean, natural gas is going to be the bridge. And I was happy to see that conversation come back, because that's been, for some reason, been completely overshadowed for the last 5-6 years.
Yeah. Well, you look at Michael Moore. I mean, he's not a likable character in any sense of the word. And I can't think of anything else that he's done that I would agree with. But by the same time, he is, and I know he hates us. He really hates us. But he's intellectually honest enough. I'm not going to say he's intellectually honest, but he's intellectually honest enough to recognize a scam when he sees it, because he's been producing all these, these anti-capitalist, not really anti-capitalist, anti-corporatist, movies, and there's some truth in those, of course. He's smart enough to see that what's before him with the solar and wind scams and the green exit scam, as I call it, is a gigantic scam. I mean, you can't not see it if you've done any analysis of this, any analysis whatsoever. You cannot not see it.
And that's the next question I was going to ask you, if we can just go a step deeper here in the pool, which is, the second thing I took away from it was, okay, the natural gas was the first, but the second thing was, it almost seemed like it was a shot at capitalism. But I think you're right when you say it's more of a shot at greed and what was the word I wrote down here? Corporate scams, that sort of thing. I think it was a shot at kind of the unethical capitalists, if you will.
Yeah. Well, corporatism was the heart of fascism. Mussolini was a hardcore socialist, but he knew that to accomplish what he wanted socialistically, he needed to co-opt industry. And so what he did is he fashioned, essentially a deal of what we now call corporatism, where gigantic companies would be created and favored, and they would do the government's work, and they would be essentially an appendage of government, and that's what we see today a lot. Unfortunately, in America, we've seen a lot of that. And that's one of the things I like about Trump. Trump sees that too. He's been attacking a lot of it. Now he's had to backtrack some with some of this, but because of the necessity to compromise with people, but the corporatism is where you're not doing capitalism. You're just doing cronyism. You're seeking government rent, and you're looking for favors in order to move your corporation ahead, and you're looking to avoid competition. That's real. Capitalism is pure competition, but corporatism is the exact opposite, and it's simply looking to government for succor and for privilege. So, and that's I just had an article up this morning on my blog that I took from a great website called Master Resource, where the fellow Bob Bradley wrote a nice article about the wind subsidies. We've been doing these damn wind subsidies since 1992 or something, and every year they tell us, "Oh, we're just about there. We just need a few more years." And I'm not against wind. I've worked on wind projects, but come on, this is ridiculous. That's pure corporatism, pure government rent seeking.
You got time for one more?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good, because this is another one of my journalistic things that have been popping up over this whole deal, which is